mayor of Weare.
He likes to think.
Good, good. Finally, good to finally meet you. Yeah. That's, I've been waiting.
Right.
Finally, thank
My
you.
friends call me that.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
You knew that.
That shows he's been here a long time, right?
All right. All right. I will call to order the August 9th, 2023 meeting of the Weare Conservation Commission at 7:06 PM. I am Andy Fulton, the chair. To my left, we have Ray, and to my right, Sherry and Mark. 4 out of 6 makes a quorum for us tonight. And we have a joint meeting. So Ricky, do you have anything to do or say to acknowledge that you have membership here tonight?
You have to open ours? Joint meeting of the Conservation Commission for Board of Selectmen, open it at whatever time it is. So,
Cool.
Ricky, you don't have 3 selectmen?
yeah, Kevin,
Kevin Cahill. Can we come up and join you guys up here?
Oh,
Just
by all
to
means.
sort of get the-
That's fine with me, yep,
See, just for discussion.
yep,
I want to see any cheap seats.
Differentiate.
I don't want to have to go all the way up here.
yeah. Okay, our first and main event for tonight is to invite up our town contract forester, Jeremy Turner, talk to us about the Felch Farm timber bid, where we are, what we propose going forward, address any questions, any concerns. But if you would, Jeremy, come on up to the podium.
Great. So, yeah, Jeremy Turner here to navigate the concerns that have been brought up from the previous timber sale bid showing that we conducted in late June on the Felch Forest. And so I guess I'm happy to navigate that through questions, or do you want some type of
Yeah, just give us
background
a quick one-over to kind of set the stage and you know, just update us where we are right now with the process.
Sure. So the process had gone as planned, where we showed the interested parties the timber sale per a bid prospectus that I mailed out and invited folks that were on a list that I have for professional loggers, and we had a pretty decent showing. I think there was four parties that showed up, and then on site, and then there was another party that went later after the showing. The showing was conducted in the morning, and most people that were showing up, everybody that showed up did the walk, and
About when was that? What?
I think it was June, late June, 29th, 26th? 28th, yep, yep. And then, so we all conducted a walk, and I prefaced the walk with an emphasis on the sense of place. The project is on probably the most heavily trafficked taxpayers' road, being the transfer station. So it's a very, as all town forests, but this one's everybody sees. So timber harvesting is a very disturbing activity temporarily. There's a lot of machines, a lot of noise. There's a lot of traffic, and then obviously wood cutting. And so, trying to set the stage of the project, I spent a lot of time at the front end explaining the importance of the improvements to get the big trucks from the town highway into the project. Is Historically, the project's never been whole tree chipped, which is a type of harvesting that I was scoping for, and everybody that showed up was all whole tree harvesting. And so a significant amount of improvement would need to take place. So the showing was sort of set the stage on the emphasizing, okay, there's a lot of work here, and to understand what level of work you intend to do, I put at the bottom of this bid sheet some breakouts, mainly the access, the improvement from the town highway to get into the project, road build, landing construction, stumping, grading, ditching. There's probably some culvert installs and a lot of what I would expect aggregation to be put on the road to keep the heavy machines off and just protecting the road, and then the transition to the public highway. The second item was a improvement and construction of a recreational trail, which the Conservation Commission has been interested in developing in this particular section of the town forest. So that would be another additional component that I wanted to understand what that would involve for effort and work on the bidder's side of things. So the front end was really loaded on that improvement. And so we did a big walk, looking over the road, looking over the landing, the perimeter, figuring out how these tractor trailers would come in from the town highway and turn, and how the wood would be received, because it takes a significant amount of area for that. And then we did a nice big walk on the project. Another thing I emphasized is it's a pine forest, and that pine forest is at a point where we're really trying to regenerate pine. And from a scientific standpoint of practicing regenerative forestry for pine, you need pine cones. You need a lot of pine cones, which we have. This is probably the best cone year we've had since 2017. And ideally, you need the disturbance of the soil to happen around the drop of the cone, which is in September, October. So we, in the walk, I was explaining, the disturbance and planned type of emphasis on getting the machines in here and creating a suitable disturbance in a timely manner for regeneration. I did say that it would not be a sole determination, but it would be a big factor in the award. We continue to hike around and looking at the marked timber and the layout for the machines, and just getting feedback to see how everybody felt it was laid out, and getting a sense of if people were interested in it and such. So we did that, and I'd say that would conclude the bulk of the walk in terms of the bid showing. One individual called when we were getting to go, and that was white logging, and he said he couldn't be there, and I said, well, that's fine, if you can hike around later, I'll give you a map. Well, he had a map. So he was not there, but he did show up after at some point. Everybody that attended, except for towns, submitted a bid, and the bids were reasonably in range across the board, I think. All four of the bids provided complete interest in all the timber that was marked and tallied, save except for the chips, which is a very losing proposition economically, so most guys aren't paying anything for it, and if they are, they're pulling out of other higher value wood to kind of offset the cost. So so the numbers were pretty good. These folks had a very strong interest in the timber through value. It was the highest bid proposal offer for the standing timber. What I explained to Marlo on the phone earlier after I looked at the sheet was that after the approach of the showing and emphasizing the importance of the expense that I suspect would be there, I saw zero cost. And I told her that because she was asking like, what's that about? And I said, that provided me just a very large concern about, there's no cost to the town for that level of work, but it was providing, the most value too on a timber. So it just didn't, to me, it felt incomplete because there was no explanation of the zero cost. So that was a significant concern I had, just understanding the other people's type of transparent valuation of that type of improvement from, I don't know, both combined with 10 to, I think, $3,500 or something, So that was a big one. There was a few other ones on the back side of the prospectus that I take into consideration. Professionally trained, loggers that, have first aid skills and safe and productive felling skills and just professionally suited and trained for harvesting timber. Another one I evaluate is the timing, which I mentioned earlier, and then references for town harvesting, which everyone except for Hardwick did not meet that either. So that's kind of the synopsis of the process. And so that's where that went, and then a few issues came up which are completely valid about the process. And historically, we've always gotten the sealed bids at our office, held them to the time mentioned, and then if people show up, we open them with any interested party. And full disclosure, this is the first prospectus where I didn't actually spell out that the bids would be opened at 2 p.m. in New London at 4:20 and blah, blah, blah. And so that is a problem for sure. And I think the other problem, especially in Dave's case and the town's case, is that, the expectation of the cost below, it's just not clear. When clearly they're thinking one thing, I'm thinking another, so that is an issue also. So given that, we obviously, with some internal discussion with the town and hearing from these folks, that we needed to pause and have this discussion,
So from this point forward, what do you see as our options? I mean, you work for us, we could tell you what to do, but, as far as our working relationship with Jeremy and his company, we've been doing this for over a decade now. It's been good.
16.
I think we're
15, 16 years.
heading towards, or well into our second decade. We've done a bunch of these, and we on the Conservation Commission are not the experts. We've found a professional that we're comfortable working with, and we've relied on Jeremy and his company exclusively for their professional services. So at this point, we've hit a bump. It happens, but it seems like one of our strong options at this point, and tell me if it's otherwise, Jeremy, would be to essentially rebid this project with a new bid spec. I don't know whether that presents a timing issue for us as far as capturing this year's harvest, but it wouldn't be something that we would have to start from point zero. It would be, well down the scale of things, wouldn't need to walk it again, but if the playing field, for reasons of omission, was so uneven that we can't effectively evaluate the bids, I believe that's one of our options as a commission, as a town, is that not? Is that something that, I guess specifically a question to you, Jeremy, something that you guys could handle and would be within the realm of practice of your business?
Yeah, I think that makes sense, but I would emphasize, too, with just pulling it back and starting, obviously, with a very clear process, too, like in terms of the bid, because, yeah, I hear the issue about it not being in a public place, or it's not clear about timing, and it's only fair to have that be open, presented, and people that are interested in that bid process to be present, and if there's any questions that I have, or if it is involved with the other town officials, that they can be asked prior to any hard decision of awarding.
And we, for the selectmen's purposes and others, we've never had that bid opening that I'm aware of at our meetings. It's never occurred to me, never been stated that maybe that would be helpful to us, but maybe going forward, that is something that we could do. The unfortunate part of going that route heading forward is we only meet once a month. So there's limitations on.
Can I give my opinion now?
I
I have a strong opinion.
Hold that for just a second, Ray. But
I have a couple questions for Jeremy
Sure.
before we get into like a decision process.
hold on just a second, Kevin.
Can you get on the microphone, because the bid taker's not gonna be able to.
When you're ready. Okay.
Yep. We do want to organize ourselves a little bit here. Ray, as somebody who's dealt with a bunch of bids, dealt with contracting more than I have, value your opinion. I'm going to want to hear that. I appreciate you letting me know, but would you be okay with, we let Kevin go with a couple questions to bring the selectmen into play?
Yeah.
Yep.
So Jeremy, I want to ask you a couple questions about the process in the site walk and the areas of question when it was brought to my attention and I read the bid results, is that zero number, okay? And it's more or less specific to the gate and the road, or access, yard, shakeout zone, blah, blah, blah. Was that specifically outlined, like, 1 foot of crushed gravel, 300 feet, 200 feet of shakeout, 3.5-inch crushed,
No.
gate of X steel, swing left to, none of that? Okay, so so it could be where it was vague that it would be very hard to put a number to. I mean, is that correct?
Yeah, and that's what my point was earlier about it just not being clear to either those folks,
Yeah.
on the receiving end, or me looking and interpreting
Yeah,
it
and
as
the
zero.
reason I ask you this is because when I read the numbers, there was a huge range, right? We went from 0 to 9,000, 1,000, 3,000, 2,500. It
Right.
was sort of all over the map. So I was just curious about that. Secondly is the idea that this is a municipality and these are public bids that, at least from my experience, they would require a public opening, which would then allow, if they were present, for a clarification. So in the future, personally, I think that they should be held, and I think they should actually be held and witnessed by our town administrator in this facility. So I don't think the board necessarily has to be there, just like the board isn't up in New London, but it should be done and witnessed here in Town Hall, because it's town property, it's part of our town. So in the future, I'd like to at least see that. I don't know where the committee stands on that, but I think that's a pretty simple fix.
Understood.
Yeah, that's simple, right? But if I was on the other side of the fence, if I was one of the competitors for this job, I would not be in favor of a rebid because I played my hand. Right? That would be, I wouldn't feel comfortable with that personally. Again, I think there's an acknowledgement how the misunderstanding of the zero number or the range between the other numbers and the lack of a specification specific to this critical area that you spoke of. So, I mean, I think as you make a suggestion to the board on how you are going to evaluate, maybe relook at these bids now with this sort of, I guess, just acknowledgement that maybe there was some shortcomings in how the process played out. And one of the bidders didn't make the walkthrough at all, so he would have never heard that, your specific, how you wanted the road, how you wanted the gate, how you wanted the turnaround, what the yard was gonna look like, how it was gonna blend into the traffic of Merrill Road. He would have been completely oblivious to that, correct?
Yeah, he called me on site, and I spent probably half an hour on the phone with him. So, again, did the same thing with him
Okay,
over the phone while he was on site with the map. So, you're right, not in person, but certainly,
so it's sort of subjective, it could be subjective.
totally. Without any criteria specs, I agree 100%.
Okay, thanks so much.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ricky.
Obviously, I would want you to facilitate this timber sale, right? I turn wrenches, you look at trees, and that's understandable.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
How many sales have been facilitated under your watch?
Here,
Town.
for the town,
Roughly.
probably, I'd say 8 to 10.
Okay. And the last one was?
Last one was, a couple of years ago, yep.
And to Kevin's point, I think that the players involved have showed their hand, honestly, so I don't know if I would do a rebid either. And also to Kevin's point, I think that nowhere in this document that I'm seeing where everybody put their bid per unit, where they were gonna be open. Now, whether it was a verbal or not,
Absolutely.
where it was gonna be open. My impression would be in town land, it should be open up in town forum. And even at the bottom here, under the sealed bid opening, and it says, contact you for questions.
Yep.
But the town reserves the right to reject the bid, which is what I think is the proper way to do this, hindsight 2020.
Yep.
Is that the town or representatives of said commission, select board, whatever, be the ones that actually open the sealed bids in that public forum. So I think there's just a little bit of maybe a misunderstanding, growing pain here. I don't think there's any malice in this at all. But again, I think that, in moving forward in the future, where it does say the town, and it's the town's property, I think the town should open the bids, just my own opinion.
Yep.
So,
Just on that point, Jeremy, what's the range of practice that you've seen between municipal customers and private customers? And are there some of your other municipal customers who have set things up so that bid opening is on, at a town meeting of some sort?
Let's see, there are, most are a non-public sort of sealed bid opening at our office.
Fair enough.
I can't think of really any that I've had to, go in. I think it,
I just asked that question and just point that out, that we're finding a reason to make an adjustment. Maybe it's not 100% industry practice, but sometimes practice should adjust, so
Sure.
just wanted to scope that out. Selectman, you okay with questions for a moment? I'd like to bring our Commissioner Ray Lemay in for your comments, Ray.
All right, having analyzed the bids, I've been to hundreds of bid openings. We bid highway work, we bid town work, everything. And twice this year, the state kind of messed up where they put out a bid, public bid opening, and for some reason, they rejected the bids, put it back out to bid, and everybody showed their hand, like we're concerned about. All the contractors got mad. The state ended up with one bid, higher than the original, because everybody knew the numbers. The people that didn't give new numbers just said, the heck with it, we're not gonna play this game. I never did. It happened to me at least 10, 15 times in the past where we would submit a bid to a town for hydro seeding or erosion control, and somebody else got the bid, and then they put it out to rebid. I didn't bid it again. Everybody knows my numbers now. Why would I do that? So this bid here, everything was done correctly at the beginning. Everybody was invited to look at the job. People showed up, looked at it, and they submitted a bid. Now, we probably wouldn't be having a problem if the highest number to the town was not the people that it says was awarded the bid. I have a problem with that.
Say that,
Because
sorry,
I've
say that
done-
a different way, Ray, I didn't understand that point.
Let's say, for example, HFL, Hillsborough, no, Hopkinton Forestry, Land Clear. Let's say they were not the highest number, and Hardwick was. Nobody would really be sitting here having a problem right now, because it's like, well, it wasn't a public bid opening, but they were the, okay. So what happened is that the person that gave the highest numbers to the town did not fill out the bottom, but they did. They put a zero. A zero is a number. I've done it, and I know Audley does it, Severino, all the people we work for do it. We play with the numbers. So, being professional logging people, they set up landings every day. They clean up the skidder trails, which can be used as walking trails, which is our rail trail, trail access. So, if I was bidding a job like this, and I felt like I wanted to do the town a little bit of a favor, say, hey, you know what, we'll do this job, we'll give these numbers, this is what we can sell the wood for, but we're gonna put a zero down here. That's fine, that's a number. And so, to have the bid rejected because they didn't give a number, to me, that's not fair. Because as a professional, they already know how to set up the landing. They're gonna do it right, and if they don't, the town or the DES can come and say, hey, you're messing up things here, fix it. And the people that do this for a living do this every day, so my big problem with the whole bid thing, now, I know it wasn't a public bid opening, it should have been. All the bids we've ever bid to towns in the state and stuff is definitely open to the public at a certain time. It should be open at a town forum, either the selectmen or us or a joint meeting, open the bid, full transparency. And then the people that submitted bids would probably be there, and they can be questioned. It's okay to question bidders at the bid opening, and they can clarify their bid. And then you pick, everybody knows what went on. This case here, I got these numbers, you know, after the fact, and I looked at everything, and I said, why did they award it to Hardwick when Hopkinton Forestry and Land has the higher number? Well, the bid was rejected, it says here, because they didn't fill out the bottom part. But they did. It says zero. That is a number. And so in my opinion, these are the people that should be doing this job. There might be other criteria, but you asked for a bid, you're expecting the highest numbers from professional people that were invited. They came in with the highest number, but they're not getting the job. That would leave a very sour taste in my mouth as a contractor. And it happened to me in the past, and it does. I don't bid to those people anymore. That's just my opinion.
Thank you, Ray,
Just
for sharing that.
One comment on that, Ray. The way we do have the bid structured in terms of it's awarded not to the highest bidder, value-wise, it's awarded to the highest value that the town would receive based on all kinds of other things, not just the bottom dollar. So I just want to make sure that that's clear.
With, if you took that zero into account, are there other of the criteria that would have excluded that bid?
As I meant.
Or more precisely, made it not the winning bid?
Sure, yeah. I mentioned earlier, the second emphasis outside of being clear of the improvements that we're talking mostly about was the timing of the entry. So when we were walking, I did make it very clear that this harvest would be very important to conduct during September, October, when the seeds were falling, to match the ground disturbance to the seed fall. And was very clear that it wouldn't be the primary driver, but it's going to be a consideration. So when Hopkinton writes different than everybody else that they'd start as soon as possible, then I don't know if they heard that point, because everybody else said fall.
The bid says as soon as ground works.
The bid says what now?
As soon as ground works. So I would take that if you said it had to be disturbed at a certain time, he's saying as soon as the ground works. That's what
Yeah.
the bid says here.
Okay,
So that would tend to tell me that they're saying as soon as you say it's ready, that they want to do it. He
Right.
said it could start in summer.
yeah,
But then they also wrote as soon as ground works.
Mm-hmm.
So that, I would presume that, and I don't do bids or anything else.
Sure.
But I would presume that would be, if you stated it, you need it at a certain time, that's telling me that's what they're talking about.
Yeah.
As soon as the ground works, they can
yeah,
do it.
right. So from my standpoint, I interpret that very differently from a forester's standpoint, because of ground conditions aren't just for seed, but usually it's driven by how wet it is. The machines are heavy, it can be a very big problem if people go in at the wrong time. So when I see that, I see if the ground works is dry. We can go, it's dry, we can go, it's dry, we can't go, it's wet, we gotta move, we gotta go somewhere else, oh, it's dry, we can go back, so that's how I interpreted that.
Yeah.
The professional logging criteria on the sheet is also something else that I weigh heavily on, because I think it's responsible professionalism to be trained and safe. And then if there's any felonies or criminal charges, I want to know that. And I don't have the sheet in front of me, but yeah, so there's some other things that and then the references are important for town forests to have experience in harvesting on town forests, and somebody I can call and say, hey, how'd the town forest job go? Not how did the private job go, not how the state job went, how did the town forest go? Because town forests are a very unique medium. So those are things that weigh into my value for the town, in addition to,
But for this particular one, with the zeros,
sure,
of the ones you mentioned, okay, the ground ones, open to some interpretation, the training was a no, but the convictions was a no, and there were references. So-
but just, I don't think they're to town forests, so.
Yeah, the Milford is.
Milford's a
Yeah,
town
yeah,
forest.
Look, we did a big job for the town of
Yep.
Milford.
And I would think the state of New Hampshire Fish and Game has to be the strictest people I have ever met. If they work for them and you call this guy, I mean, Fish and Game, they're a whole different animal.
So, hey, Jeremy, I think having, well, now that we're going to go to a public opening here at Town Hall, is gonna add some clarity with that question. For instance, you want the pine cones dropping and while you're disturbing the soil, so that if you're regenerating the forest. That makes all kinds of sense. That question could be asked of the contractor at that time. I noticed that you're ready to go, but the town, to get the biggest yield, okay, out of this project, which isn't just the dollars, okay? It's the growth from a forester's perspective. Would you be willing, or are you willing to wait till September? Because you have to take that into consideration. I understand that. It's not a tangible. You can't say that's worth X number of dollars, but that is something. And then if the contractor said to you, no, sorry, we're booked this fall, we gotta go now, then you could say, okay, I'll take that into consideration. And then obviously a discussion with your employer about this is how I'm making the decision. Again, from my point of view, I just think there was just a gap in communication and clarity that's just led us into this path. When you did call Marlo to explain the zeros, did you ask any of those questions of her that were your other concerns, safety training? Obviously, the Milford reference wasn't spoken about, but the pine cone drop, were any of those discussed at that phone conversation?
No, she called me after the decision was
Oh, okay,
noticed.
okay, all
Yep.
right, all right. So you don't reach out to people if you have something that just, you need clarity on, right?
Sure, yeah.
You don't take that doesn't happen?
Again, my interpretation of that bid submission was, in my brain, very clear. I just felt that they weren't going to put what I felt was clearly explained to them during the bid, and it just, so no, I didn't see a need to reach out. Retrospect, we're gonna do it differently
Okay,
and
good.
have that.
Good.
The only thing I'd ask for is you get above the podium.
And introduce yourself when you get there, so the public.
Hi, Dave Herrick, Hopkins Forestry. I just wanted to say, I feel like whenever a bid should go out, if there's any question on say, the dirt work side of it, that there be a spec, so everything's apples for apples with any contractor. I mean, yes, verbally, but there's a lot of room for interpretation going both ways. We do a lot of work for the state of New Hampshire, and it's fairly clear with those folks, and we have that same situation where, when you're bidding a job, you do your best to get the project, and sometimes you put zero, and it's not an uncommon practice in the industry to have that happen. So, but if there's ever a question for Jeremy on what's going to get done, a spec would really be huge. So that's all I had to say.
Excuse
Thank
me,
you.
Dave, just,
Yeah.
the CLP training.
Yeah.
What is that, and why
That's,
don't you?
that's when you go down to the Timber Landowners Association. We do
Yeah.
practice in that. We don't go to everyone. Honestly, it's manpower. It's hard to get good help nowadays, and we do go to as many of them as we can, but, you have turnover. Those people move on to other places, and, but we do go to those practices and, try to get that training. A lot of times, we've gone to those training, practices and seen quite a circus act happen. And we've been doing this for 33 years now, and we've always done a good job, and we've got a fairly lengthy list of recommendations from private to state to towns, and never had any complaints. So anyways, any other questions?
Thank you.
Thanks.
I can sympathize with what you're saying. We went through 19 guys 2 years ago, and we paid for the OSHA 10s for every one of them, so they could be on the state jobs, and they all lasted about a week or two. So we spent many thousands of dollars getting OSHA 10s for people that we don't even have as employees. It's not easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any question?
Yeah, sure.
So, the interpretation factor, is, to Andy's point, is there a spec that other municipalities use for said landing, entry, et cetera?
No, it's all unique to the job.
Okay.
And in this one, you know, it wouldn't be too difficult to build a spec requirement that guys can say, okay, it needs X amount of this aggregate for this distance, this deep, this pipe size, and these stumps need to be put here, and then this surface needs to be armored with this, and out on the ingress on the town highway, this has to be like that, with this material and this volume. So it wouldn't be that difficult to do. So like David said, everybody knows what they're needing
And
to.
it's reasonable, I mean, I wouldn't wanna hear, oh yeah, we gotta put a 16-inch culvert in before we.
Oh, yeah,
I
no.
wouldn't wanna hear that, but
No.
as long as it's reasonable.
Yeah.
And all the parties say, yeah, that's fine.
Right.
type thing. So.
Sure.
Jeremy, so, just so we just don't spin our wheels here, okay, which
Sure.
can happen. With everything that's been brought to light, with people's opinions, the select board's input, committee's input, the bidder's input, would you want to take time to reevaluate now that you understand everyone else's opinion, you know? I can easily see what happened, you know what I mean?
Sure.
You crack this thing open, you're looking at it with the blinders on, this is what I think is the best deal for the town, and bang, go thinking it's just gonna sail through, right? Would you prefer as our employee to take a minute, not in this room, and digest this and get back to us?
Yeah, if that's what you folks.
I mean, obviously, I don't want to, it's uncomfortable to put you on the spot tonight, right? I mean, we have to make I don't want you to make a decision, but now that you know that their intent meets your requirements, I think you could ask David, would he be willing to wait till September, which is only 3 weeks away anyway, at this point, so that you get your pine drop, things like that, and then maybe make a recommendation back to the committee? Would that be fair, Andy? I think everyone agrees that putting it out to bid
Yeah.
might not be in the best interest of the town.
Oh, certainly, you wouldn't guarantee a better result, at least as far as price goes. But I've been involved with some bidding at the state level, and for what I've done, we've always had the caveat, and maybe it's not written up this way with what Jeremy's done, he can correct me, that we are not, in our case, required to take the lowest bidder. We look for price, of course, but it's the most responsive bidder. So there are times when, you know, I could evaluate bids and say, well, all right, I see these folks here have the lowest price. That might not be the best service. So built into the way, the times I've been involved with it, we bid that is, you know, very key that you get the most responsive. It is a subjective element, but you're not shoehorned into solely a price-based evaluation. So I can appreciate what Jeremy's saying, what I've heard. My interpretation of it is there are elements that start moving to a little bit of the subjective side of a choice. So I appreciate what services have provided us on this. As a commissioner, I don't feel like there's so much pressure that, dang it, we gotta get this thing done now or there's some terrible consequence. You know, I would suggest to my fellow commissioners and to the board that this decision is not for tonight. And the range of decisions are still all on the table, from rejecting all to sticking with first inclination to changing that recommendation. So, yes, it does suspend everything, but my recommendation, or a sense where I see this right now, is mostly in agreement with you, Kevin, that, you know, we don't need to act in haste here.
Yeah, and I would like to defer to the
it-
professional. He understood, if he has additional questions, excuse me, sorry to cut you off.
Well, I can appreciate that folks, like, they need to line up work. You know, there are livelihoods that, you know, folks rely on to do their work. And any change kind of riles or roils, you know, that scene. But fundamentally, you know, I don't think we need to come to that decision point tonight.
Yeah, I think, yeah, go ahead, Ricky, but I do think it's important, and we have not mentioned this, and since this is a public meeting and it is being broadcast, we are talking about a difference monetarily of about $15,000. And as Jeremy said, there are other factors, which is actually the regeneration of the forest, which we can't put a monetary number to, but I would like to defer to him now that he has clarity, is where does he stand on that? Which I mean, the criteria that he based the decision of the zeros, which was confusing, and when the project was going to actually be implemented was the second biggest problem, and clarity on this walking trail path thing, which we didn't discuss tonight, but I don't think probably was the big factor on how the decision was made. So I do also, in fairness to the contractor, our board and your board I would like us to set a time to either reconvene or have an answer, so we can kind of put it to bed, right? It doesn't seem, I mean, is that fair enough?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I don't feel like this needs to take a ton of time to make a determination or, you know, a suggestion or advise what I think we should do to move ahead. I don't think
And
that's.
that's.
Just, hold on a second, Marlo.
Yeah, no,
I'll get you for sure.
I just want to do some clarification,
Yep.
but go ahead,
Yeah,
just because I'm the one that filled it out.
Oh, I'll give you your chance, absolutely.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
good, thank you.
Yeah, I think the point we're at now, and I agree with both of you guys, is the fact that no decision needs to be made tonight. We don't need to make it in haste, absolutely not. But I think that the fact that the statement coming into this was that the Hopkinton bid was incomplete. And I think that needs to be removed from that and reevaluated with current information that has been presented tonight and clarification that have been made, and just reassess and go, all right, let's reassess the players in the game again, but that was not an incomplete bid. It was a misinterpreted bid. That's the point I wanna make. And again, and I can completely agree with you, because we've done that at the select board level, is we didn't always take the most merit or the least merit. We've obviously gone in between because we know the quality of the work. We've crossed that bridge 100%, and I don't disagree with that. But I think that you know, Mr. Turner can go back and say, all right, now I've got these 4 bids, they're back on the table, let me just look at them one more time. On his time, again, what Kevin said with a timeline, to reapproach and come back. So.
Fair enough. Do you want to respond to any point to that, Jeremy?
I don't think so. I
Okay.
mean, I'm pretty clear on what.
All right. Marlo, please, come on up and share your thoughts on this.
I just want to make sure that it's clear, because, you know, as there's some confusion here, that when I wrote in when the ground conditions are applicable to work, a lot of times in all the years that we've been doing this, they kind of, you know, a lot of times the forester's the one that says, yeah, you can come in or you can't come in, for whatever reason. Sometimes it's ground conditions, sometimes it's, you know, like what he just said, the seed, sorry. So, you know, so that's why I wrote what I wrote, you know, in that. And the other thing is, the mill that we're working with, that we'll be selling the product to if we were to get the job, who gave us the price, is where kind of the pricing comes from. They'd rather see it more towards the fall themselves. So, but, you know, that everybody works together on this, because you never know. you know, you might say it's too wet, or this is gonna work, or it's not gonna work. So we're always subject to ground conditions, weather, good forestry, and everything. So that's nothing new to us either.
Even road conditions?
Road conditions, yeah, whatever that they are, so.
Posted.
So I just wanted to make sure that maybe I didn't use the right language in the time of doing the job. I was just trying to say that, you know, you're probably gonna be in charge of when we can start or we can't. And then you try to work through it as, together, you know what I mean? Because you want the job done, we wanna get the job done, the mills want the product. So, and as far as the road work, as my husband mentioned, we do tons of state jobs, and it's involved in that number. And that's how I took it. We were gonna, you know, we knew that we had to excavate 3-4 loads of stone, the trail work. So we had figured a couple days of the excavator and, you know, 3-4 loads of stone, you know. But there again, that could also change, all depending on the weather. But that's why, you know, you put your bid in, like you mentioned, and that's how we did it, so.
Okay.
Any questions?
I guess my question would be, how would we as a commission or people we hire to evaluate these know just what you were intending to put into that line?
You mean the zero part?
Never mind the zero,
Yeah.
but the thinking behind it. How would the person reading the bid know what your intentions were as far as what you're providing or what your ideas regarding what's needed to meet that item on the bid?
Well, as Jeremy stated, he kind of spoke what he was looking for. And so when my guy came back to me and said, you know, this is what we gotta do, this is what I see, this is what, because I think you would even ask some of the contractors, hey, what do you think here? You know what I mean? What do you think this is gonna take?
Yeah.
So that's how you do it.
So there's an implicit, as a contractor bidding on it, agreement with what was presented at the pre-bid meeting,
Right.
so that if it was determined to be inadequate, you would have to step to the plate and say or you'd have to step up and say, all right, we can make this adequate, just give us a little bit more, either time to do the work, a little bit more understanding of why what we're doing is
It
not
does get, I
adequate.
think what you're saying is it can get a little messy, because as you saw all 4 different bids, right? There was, you know, 10, 3,500, I think 8, you know.
I think, right, that speaks to the layout of the bid.
That's
And
right.
we've learned something here.
Right.
Our you know, forester has learned something here as far as what would be helpful to, as Dave said, get everybody on the same playing field, kind of force people on the playing field when you spell things
Well,
out a
with
little bit more.
specs, yeah, but-
With a few specs, or it can be expansive, it can be, you know, perhaps this case it was so minimal that we couldn't have a proper evaluation, or a full evaluation, but we want to have everybody on the same playing field when we receive these, so that we can evaluate it and say, all right, I know they heard what I'm saying, and I'm not gonna have to go back out there after the fact and say, you know, we have a disagreement. You heard something that I didn't say, or I thought you heard something, and we have a disagreement on sort of like the 11th hour as you're wrapping up the project or laying out the project, and
think
that's
that
where,
could
that's where I
help.
think, and this is for the selectmen, this is for the commission, for our guests, this is where I think we failed on what we put out there as a bid. Maybe it's worked 99 times, and here we're on the 100th, and it hasn't worked to our adequate acceptance. So that we don't find ourselves in a position where we can evaluate it on what's presented. We have to ask questions, we have to sort of tease out just what people are thinking here.
Well, I think that was the point of what Mr. Turner was talking about, of a spec, some kind
Right,
of
yeah.
a written spec. That was a little more detailed and not up to interpretation.
Well, certainly, I think that's a lesson, but it might not be a solution. It's-
I
Well,
think even with the spec, knowing from my experience, even with a spec, the numbers would have been the same.
Yeah.
I mean, we bid,
But
I'll
Ray,
give you an
it's
example.
it's not strictly just a numbers game.
no, but if all the bids are evaluated strictly on emotion, it completely nulls any kind of bid.
Well, I think putting a zero there is an acknowledgement of what it was gonna cost. It wasn't, if it was
Right.
blank, it'd be a different story. There was a zero put there, so I think it was
If you
acknowledged.
put too much emotion into a bid, there's no sense anyone bidding. Why would I give my best number if people are gonna look at it and say, well, we feel that this isn't quite what we want? Well, that's not how you bid. That's not how bids go. That's not how they're supposed to go. If it went to court, I'm sure they'd see it that way. I see it every day. The state's very careful about their specs. And in spite of that, there's 250 pages in a normal little culvert job of specs, right? The numbers still come out hundreds of thousands of dollars in every direction. And I've done the same. I've bid numbers where I was second bidder, but the low bidder was $200,000 lower than me on $1 million job. That's 20%.
So, Ray, are you suggesting that as a commission and looking at these in the future, it ought to just boil down to the numbers and whoever's,
Yes.
depending on what service, low bid or high bid,
Yes.
you're saying numbers
You
on?
give out a
yeah.
questionnaire that's answered, okay? So that's it. No emotions there. Yes or no? And experience level, there you go. There's your people that these people have worked for. I do the same thing. You call these people if you have a question. They'll tell you if there was a problem, and they'll tell you if they really liked working with a particular company. No emotions.
What if they tell you there was a problem, but, gosh, it was a minor problem, we figured it out, we got over
Then
it?
that's a good thing. There's always a problem. You work with them.
So, but
How
you're-
easy
you're-
are the people to work for?
I think that's a huge question, and I don't see the answer right now. And
Yeah.
the question being, do we go forward on strictly set it up, it's a numbers based, there's a formula you attach to the number somehow, and that's it?
Well, I
Pretty
think,
much.
Andy, I think what Ray, because again, of my career in the construction industry, I did a tremendous amount of bidding too. And that 250-page spec book is the catch-all, okay? There's some place in that book that's gonna allow, in this particular case, when Jeremy writes his spec up, he's gonna say, no, it's an 18-inch culvert. The 12 might work, but I told you 18, I want 18. Dig the 12 up and put the 18 in, okay? It's 1.5 feet of gravel, it's 75 feet of shake off, 3.5-inch aggregate, okay? That's what the spec says, that's what everybody's doing. So it just evens that playing field. The only place it's a little gray with what you are doing, and I appreciate what Jeremy's saying, is there is this rebuild of the forest and how it's going to be executed. And is that going to support what he's trying to do, is get us the biggest return 10 years down the road from now when we go back in. So how he does that is really in that what I think should be a mandatory walkthrough. I think if they don't show and they don't hear it, and they should sign a sheet and acknowledge that they heard what you said, and you have that piece of paper to back it up, that everybody hits those bullets, I think that would make that very black and white too. So there is a little bit of subjective here in how you're doing it with when the pine cones fall and how many seeds fall out of the pine cones.
And there's no guarantee that the selected person will actually perform.
Exactly. And they may do things that he's not happy with when he walks onto the site. Like I said, no, stay 60 feet from those existing trees. I don't want that machine sitting compressing those roots right there. So, but that's going to happen, right? That's supervision. But I think the specification isn't a big deal, as Jeremy stated. I think he can quickly scratch one out that would work for each of the project with that general criteria. And I think you really would get it down to black and white, as Ray said then.
Please come on up, introduce yourself, and speak to the issue at hand.
Okay, I'm Sandy Hino.
David's wife, and this is my brother, and I want that to be perfectly clear that, yeah, I am a relative, but I am also a resident of Weare for over 50 years. We've been a taxpayer for over 50 years here. And so my feeling is that if all 4 or 6 or 8 people who make these bids are all qualified and meet all the criteria, that the boards, whether it's the selectmen or the Conservation Commission, should certainly take into consideration the taxpayers in Ware. If there's that big a difference in the pricing, I'd like to think that, you know, that would be given some serious consideration.
Thank you, Sandy, absolutely. Would anybody else like to speak to this item tonight?
I just want to make one point, this, that I think your rebids off the table, you didn't say, I'm Naomi Bolton. So when you put your notice out, you didn't warn them that you have the right to accept and reject any and all bids. So I think everybody put their cards on the table. I don't think you have that opportunity of throwing them out without warning them.
It's on the timber bid sheet.
But what we put out publicly,
It's what I mailed out and also handed out.
this is what we put out for posting for public notice. So I'm just saying, could be on that sheet, but it wasn't noticed to anybody else that might have seen this, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't know if
It
it's,
says the town reserves right to throw in all bids if you want.
okay,
Yeah.
should have been put here too. That was the public notice.
Okay. All right, don't want anybody going away tonight feeling like you didn't have a chance to say what you wanted to say. Now, I think what we have in front of us is timeline to decision. Does anybody see otherwise?
Nope.
Jeremy, does 1 month out upset things to the point where the work couldn't get done if we get to a decision? As far as you can tell?
Take a month to vote, to make a decision, is that what you're saying?
I'm saying if the decision were made at the next Conservation Commission meeting, does that throw the schedule of work in arrears, not giving anybody awarded the contract sufficient time to ramp up and actually do the work?
Yeah, I would say it would jeopardize
I would agree.
people's schedule and, yeah, I don't feel we,
Yeah, I think a month would be too long.
Yeah.
Just for scheduling purposes.
I would think a week you should be able to make a
Yeah, Jeremy, how
decision.
long will it take you to get back to us?
yeah, I would say that, you know, a week is what would be reasonable for me to come up with a.
Do you want
So I
to,
think the next question would be, could the commission meet within a week, week and a half?
do you want to send a representative to our next work session?
When is that?
Monday.
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 But even if they send a representative though, that's not the commission's, that's not the
You'd have-
commission's,
Well, if I understand this though, because I was attending the other meeting that this topic began at, was that we were talking about Duck Pond. But at that point, the bid, the award had been made prior to you guys meeting anyway. So it isn't that you don't make the award, that's correct, right? You had notified Hardwick that they were the chosen bidder
No.
prior to that meeting, because I had become aware of it at that point.
So, let me run this by you. We've done this in the past where if Jeremy comes up and says, I think that we should go with vendor Z, whoever it is, and that gets emailed to the commission. The commission individually, Mark, you would email Andy and say, I agree with said statement as Z, and then you hear from your quorum, and either Andy or Steve can come to us and say, the consensus is to go with vendor C at our work session. We've done that in the past where because if everybody emails, everybody is considered a meeting. That can be construed as a meeting. So, but if everybody individually responds to you as the chair, or Steve as the vice chair, or whoever, and that's a consensus, then then you have the board's consensus and you wouldn't have to wait for that month.
That's a new one.
I'm not mistaken, am I, Naomi?
I thought he would make the recommendation and then the Conservation Commission makes the award, because
Okay.
he works for us
It's never
and,
worked like that, Naomi. That's what we were talking about. We're gonna refine the whole process.
yeah, no, I think it needs to be refined, but at the same time, just, you don't
It's up
have,
to the Conservation Commission?
it's town property, so how do you discuss that?
That's conservation.
It's town, I think it's conservation.
Conservation.
Because it's timber money that's gonna go into the town forest, it's gonna be spent on purchasing or doing
So
something
could you guys hold a mid-meeting? With that being the end topic?
Come back in 2 weeks on a Wednesday?
You'd be in and out in 5 minutes.
Or come in, we can have another collaborative session on Monday night. We'll be on camera, it'll all be set. We'll put you first on the agenda, 6:30 to 6:40, and you tell us what you think,
And we're
based
done.
on Jeremy's recommendation. Would that work?
As long as you guys had a quorum. But I think what Naomi's saying is that we don't need to be involved.
No, I don't, the only thing that we need to be involved is if we have,
Yeah.
Selectmen.
if we have any other questions for them in regards to,
All right, so, but who makes the vote?
well, the vote prior to this, there wasn't even a vote. It was
Correct.
awarded by Jeremy.
But on this occasion.
I don't
who
think they've
makes the
done it
vote?
before, so.
We would do that at we'd take the recommendation from our forester and approve that work going forward with a Forest Service agreement contract.
Right.
So it's not official until we sign
No, and.
off on that.
Right, and I realize that, I just, again, I don't. In this, who is the town? Is it the conservation, is it the commission, or is it the board of selectmen? That's that's where my hand is,
Conservation,
I
I
don't know
think.
who it is, whose responsibility? I think
It's
it's
a-
you guys.
I think it's
I
I
conservation.
think it's the commission, myself. Is that a fair statement?
Sure, I don't, I mean, this is a really steep learning curve for me right now.
Yeah, I got
Yeah.
you, straight up, yeah,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, and that-
I'm gonna throw one more wrench in here.
Go for
I
it,
just-
Salem.
It makes me feel uncomfortable. We have all acknowledged ad nauseum that mistakes were made. We're gonna correct them. Fantastic. But it says the sale will be awarded the following day. It was done. The sheet Naomi showed us, presented there, said, there will not be reconsiderations. This doesn't say reconsiderations. It says some may be rejected. So it just makes me uncomfortable now going back on things that were presented in what will amount to legal documents.
I think that's a strong read.
Jeremy, did you actually send a letter out?
The letter?
Yeah, did you actually send this out and tell?
Yeah, I emailed a list of loggers, directly,
Yeah,
yeah, so, and I think,
I think they were all on here,
and I think Marlo, I
yes.
emailed you, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The email that went out Tuesday the 11th that we have here, it went out to Donnie Hardwick, Marlo, White's Logging, and Mike Watts.
Yep.
From you,
Okay.
so.
So again, I would say that's still not the done deal of we are going forward, because that decision point of accepting the recommendation had not been arrived at. That was arrived at in the public forum. At a conservation meeting, we say, and they have said, this is our recommendation from the forester. To this point, we've had no reason to second guess that. We get give the go-ahead, we sign the documents, and off the machinery, the mechanism is in play to actually complete the work.
I think the only thing that could be to go against the legal aspect of it, the town never had the opportunity to reject any and all bids.
So, well, what I was wondering about that was, so have you signed anything that you act as an agent of the town in this matter? So did you pull the trigger on this by accepting a bid?
Yeah, I had an agreement with the town to be their agent.
So that's where I'm kind of hung up on, the town reserves the right, well, we did that through Jeremy.
Yeah, the town.
I don't know that there is
Represented by
any
the
kind of matter of accepting, it's not just a recommendation if we have given him that ability and that authority.
Naomi,
So,
Go ahead, Naomi.
What's that? Oh, that's what I'm asking.
I just tried with Jeremy, he has something signed by Steve Najar. But if you remember, it's probably been a year, we had Laura come up with a forestry agreement because Jeremy's been doing work for us. No one has a signed agreement. We had Laura look at it, you guys have looked at it at, I don't remember the date, but you guys approved the draft. I have to finish the draft, fill in the date, which we talked about time of 5 years.
right,
And then that gets signed between the forester and the selectman to be a vendor. That's a contract with the town. We don't have a signed one. I know he has a signed one by Steve, but I think you guys were signing agreements on individual projects. That's totally different from being our town forester for 5 years. Right?
I agree.
Right, because we looked at that and we talked about it, and Jeremy has added, I've got pencil notes that says you need to add NH after New London, and there's some other little comments that I had to fix. So that, to me, would not be a contract. I know individual projects, you guys sign these FSAs. That's different than a contract with the town selectman to be the forester for 5 years. Totally different. That's why I keep
Thanks for
saying
making
no.
that clarification,
He showed me
yeah.
an FSA.
Yeah.
He says yes, but it's signed by the vice chair of the conservation. It's not signed by the selectman and the forester.
Right, we got to 11 o'clock with that, not 12.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It was late that night. But we don't have that done partially. I haven't had it done. I've told them I hadn't had it done. I planned on doing it today. I didn't have time. It's on my desk to do tomorrow. But we don't have that contract because I don't think we could ever come up with one for all the years' work he's done. The one contract that we ask.
yeah,
Make sense? That's why I keep saying no, because we
Thank
don't
you.
have one.
thank you. So the nitty-gritty of that is,
this isn't a legal document.
I would say that the town has not awarded that work. Yes, the bid was evaluated, the bid was selected, the premium bid was selected based on, at that time, on what our forester knew. But I do not believe the town has accepted that choice.
I would agree. I would concur with that.
Based on the fact that we don't have a contract, and he doesn't have the authority to do it.
Sure.
Okay? I think that's.
None of us are lawyers.
I think that's.
We'll see what
I
happens.
turn wrenches, you do too.
But I think.
No, we got the gears of the town moving here,
That's
Yeah,
so,
I agree.
so it is,
The one big reason we're here is because we all agreed that the bid was rejected. I don't want to use the word unfairly, but it should not have been
Correctly,
rejected.
yeah.
So that
I
becomes,
wouldn't state it as, no, Ray, we haven't voted or all agreed to that. Many have stated that position. I would just modify what you said to say, many have stated, the majority of people who've spoken up have stated that position. Not quite all, because we haven't demanded that or sought that at this juncture. So I like what Kevin's saying in that we already have a public forum with many of the players here tonight already committed. So Naomi, if you can post a work session of the commission, we'll reverse this and the next available being Monday night, right? The commission, if we can,
You guys are more than welcome.
if we can form a quorum, if we can get 4 people there, we can act in official capacity.
For Monday night?
for Monday night. Do we have enough time to notice for that?
do their agenda for Monday night.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
be-
had 24 hours.
yeah, it'd be 6:30 to 6:45, 6:40, it only takes
But I
that
can
long.
post a joint
And-
session, work session with conservation. Do you guys, well, three of you, you still need to make one more.
You'll have to have somebody else
Or
anyway.
Sherry could actually,
Yeah, Sherry could,
she could
Sherry could
step down and.
step away from the board of selectmen, because we'll have our three.
Wait a minute, I can't vote on this, depending on which, I can vote as far as for Jeremy,
Okay,
okay?
so you're gonna abstain regardless of what board you're on.
I'm not gonna abstain from Jeremy, but if we go into any other discussions with who's gonna get the bid,
Yeah, I think that's the point.
I'm gonna abstain.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright.
Well, it's,
I have to.
we've got
So you gotta get.
we've got a key player out of state, and I do recall once that we had a sick selectman who called in a vote, I believe, once. I don't know
Did that happen?
whether that option is at all available. I
I don't know.
tend to doubt it on the other end, but you never know on these things.
That was the COVID thing.
We do have another member who's in town who might be available to achieve what we need to achieve, and if we can't,
If you can't, you can't.
we can't,
Make it short and sweet.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just last thing to you, Jeremy, is that enough time to take and, you know, what you heard tonight, and we can talk about it and touch base before Monday evening at what time about, Naomi?
6:30
6:30.
6:30.
on the button. Won't be late.
Who, me?
I've got another question.
Go for it, Salem.
Back it up. So we.
Is it on this
Yeah,
specific
yeah.
item, or we?
Well, we
Okay.
had two problems to solve. One was this immediate bidding, and one was how are we gonna correct it in the future? And so we talked about how there have been 8 to 10 in the last, it's not even one a year. So do we know when the next bid will come up? Because we need to be ready for that one.
Oh, it could easily be within the next quarter.
Okay.
So is that something that I
A
think
bid
that's-
for forestry work or something else? Because we have the asbestos abatement bid that we're
No.
gonna be working on next couple.
No, I think we're talking specifically about
Specifically,
harvest
yeah.
work.
I just wanna make sure that the things we've talked about get captured, and if anybody has any thoughts on, hey, this is what we need to do better next time, just at least have them all written down.
I plan to prepare that,
Okay.
that whole criteria of what I would suggest the town adopt for bid procedures.
Right,
And
and
that's
that-
part-
You guys can,
We can circulate and kick that around and
yeah,
make
I
sure.
think that's probably the better term, is criteria rather than a spec. So, yeah.
And we've asked a bunch of things of you here, Jeremy. One thing I don't want you to leave here without is just remember, if we're asking something of you that is, you term it legit, but it's outside of industry norm, at least let us know if it's outside industry norm, so we can sort of file that in the back. And it might be outside norm, and we might insist that that's what we need to do going forward, but I would like to know that, and I think the commission should know that if that's where we are choosing to take this process.
gotcha,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that goes for the contractors too. You know, share your perceptions, share your, interest in the process with the commission even as a body that seeks to do a forestry work going forward. That informs us, and maybe, just maybe going forward, we don't have some of these misunderstandings, so. It's the community of what goes on within a town, unfortunately, sometimes gets small and small and small. We need to open it up, build it up bigger so that there's broader awareness of important things like what it takes to successfully work as a contractor in a business. So, thank you for taking the time tonight and showing your interest.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
This is just promotes notes.
All right, Selectmen?
All right, are you all set with us?
If you're set with us, we're gonna go into a typical quarterly meeting with our forester. So if you wanna know what we get on several times a year from our forester as we sort of lay out the work, and you can, and you wanna stick around. If you don't, that's A-okay too. And you can,
I'm gonna make a motion that the board of selectmen adjourn.
Yep.
And there's an aye there, so appreciate you guys. Really. Thank you.
Adios.
Salem.
Looks like that was 8:25.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, likewise. See you Monday. Yeah, you bet.
Point of, questions been asked as we continue on here at 8:25. Our additional guest here is Andrew Sherd. Did I pronounce that right? Who is a teacher at John Stark and had some information to share with me last night that he wanted to share with the board tonight. So, that, no, you're good hanging in with us? All right, I think this will be informative to you, I hope. But we'll have Andrew come up. It's unrelated interest, but not 100% unrelated. Yeah.
So Jeremy, I gave them all copies.
Great, yeah, yep, excellent. Okay.
It's awfully hot in here.
It is that.
It seriously,
The AC on?
Turn something on or
or
open?
just
Open
the
the
air
window
coming in.
Oh, depends.
Are we good on opening windows?
From that side of the building.
Pardon?
The wind was from that side of the building today.
Hmm.
There's all this stuff on it.
We're working so hard, we're sweating.
We're gonna do AC?
Yeah, just turn it on.
All right, we'll do one or the other.
Pocket's gonna blow directly at you probably.
It's okay.
Yeah, just letting you know.
It's gonna get ready for the winter.
This, right over there, my nose
Should have
hurts.
thickened up the blood.
Sorry. Being a-
Oh, no sweat, yeah. All right. Before we move into the management project, progress report, just clarification, so Monday night, 6:30, you guys want me to be present here? And to
That'd be good.
provide my recommendation,
Yes.
and Naomi's going to be providing the 5-year contract, which,
I'm seeing nods, that's cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
and then we can process that.
And
So
that-
whatever, if we do get moving forward Monday night, that thing's in place, right? Okay.
Should be.
Yeah, because you'll be here to sign, go to sign.
Yep, perfect. I want to be clear about that part.
No problem.
Super. Okay, great. So, yeah, this month's, or this report, like normal, I've prepared the progress based on work completed since I last attended in October last year, and I believe I was supposed to attend in December, and that meeting, I don't know if it was canceled or just, you guys didn't need me to attend, so it's been a while, but the fair amount of work has been completed fairly recently, so timing-wise, it works well. Moving through work items since last reported, obviously the timber sale of Felch, we've talked at length, no need to keep on that. The pollinator habitat annual mowing over at Eastman, we did get the bid out and awarded to Land Works, Forest Works rather, out of Bradford, and he's currently mowing in between these rainstorms on site, so the road's mowed, the landing's been mowed out,
Oh, great.
yeah, and then.
Underway.
Yeah, oh yeah, and the field behind the store and such is about half complete. So he should be done by the end of next week, I think,
Any
pretty
reports
easily.
on how that,
Yeah,
going
Matthias
as-
was out there yesterday, and yeah, just good decisions, with rain. He hasn't created any issues, and the mowing, product is really, it's awesome.
Good,
In terms of
good.
improvement,
I'll
so.
have to get out there and take a look.
Yeah, yep. So, let's see, boundary maintenance for the Hardwick line, that's been sort of the bigger, no, yeah, so that Meridian bid, which you guys took care of, payment of, I believe, because it went directly to you. That's another nice achievement we have in place, that's completed. And the encroachment on Brookshire, which I did provide a handout for you guys for your review and record, but essentially what's going on there is historically there's been issues with several properties down there, and because of the easement and just ownership rights, we hired years ago Bob Todd to make those boundary lines clear and present, and we informed each owner where there were issues, necessary corrections that needed to be placed. So you asked us to go and look to see if they're compliant and in spirit of that request, and most appear to be resolved based on our review, but there are a number of issues in terms of encroachments or just people maintaining sort of their sense of place onto town land. So in here, you'll find a map showing where mowing continues in several spots. And, it is what it is. It's, a lot of that use is continuing to be
Okay.
practiced despite the expense of you guys hiring a surveyor and getting survey lines in, so it was clear, because that was one of the big concerns originally, that the people didn't know where their boundaries were, and so I guess with that, it's just,
You've got that updated nicely for us.
Yep.
We now decide what to do with it. Thank you.
you bet. The TSI at Toby Hill, that's currently half of the cost of what we plan to do, so, if time allows, we probably might.
That's Timber stand improvement?
Yeah,
What's TS?
sorry, yeah, the acronym is Timber Stand Improvement.
Okay.
It's a pre-commercial, it's kind of a weeding and thinning
Yep.
of areas that we couldn't, or didn't want to commercially introduce big machines.
So that's
through
where you, using
manually.
your own labor,
Yep,
do some tidying.
yep, tidying up, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
okay.
So, that property is sort of I feel, an under-celebrated town forest, and every time I go up there, I think of what a, it's a small piece, easy to get to, and just demonstrates some great habitat and forestry and all these other things that you guys have been stewarding for a long time.
That's the one up by the towers?
Yes, yep. So, it's I like to think of all these properties as model forests, but that one's has some really neat things we've been doing over the years, so, there's just always opportunities to hold and host public sort of workshops, and that would be a really neat opportunity at some point. The GIS project, that I think Steve's kind of leading up, with Laura, on my team, I think has been looking for some membership feedback, so it's kind of in your court still at this point.
Do you remember? No, I think Steve said that we now have that linked by our website, is that, do you recall? Folks recall?
Yeah.
All right. So Andrew, if you haven't looked at our website to that link, definitely a good one to peg.
Yeah, just saw that. actually.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is it functioning and
Yeah, it's basic.
basic, but it's a
you get the
start?
boundary lines. Yeah.
Great, okay. Super. And then, let's see, a boundary maintenance, service is is still underway, and was sort of a, what's the term? It was held up, this service, by the survey work from, on the annexation. So, we'll just have to, I've got the FSA for the boundary work, that captures the county lot, Hardwick lot, and Barden lot. And with the hang-up with the Hardwick lot survey pushed us over the expiration date of that service. So, so I have that with me, and that one I actually adjusted down too, because of the county lot. We're not able to complete the work I thought we would, because we're still waiting for your town council about that quiet title. So I adjusted the new FSA number down a bit, but it did expire, and I've got that with me. And
All right, so that's
Is that clear?
Hardwick and County, there's still some points that aren't resolved.
no, Hardwick's good now, because we had the survey done.
Yep, okay.
That held up the completion of this FSA.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So the FSA
Meridian, right, Meridian's done their
Yeah.
bit.
So there's
So
a little
that's
bit work left to do in, on Barden lot. The county lot's done as much as we can do, but we're still waiting on town council, which I'd like to understand if there's been any opinion on that quiet title, since we're at that item.
What still needs to be done
We
on the Barden?
Yeah, we hired Ron Klamarzik, a licensed land surveyor, to provide an opinion of the county lot line against, I forget the owner's name, and he clearly,
No, I've got that on county, but I thought you mentioned that there's still something needs to be done with regard to Barden, and I thought we were resolved on Barden.
yep, Barden was
Barden's
good.
100% set, so does this FSA that needs to be renewed reference Barden any longer? Or is it just,
It captures the exact same spirit of that document. And we haven't billed you for the Barden, we haven't billed you for any of that, so I just included everything like it was. It's just a renewal to push out to the end of the fiscal year, which you've already got this on your radar for expenses, so
Yeah.
I think we're okay. So it expires in December, but the one we had, I think, expired this spring or something, so.
okay. Thank you.
Sure. Yep. So I'll just give you that for now. That's action item for that work. Okay, and then, that concludes what we've completed since the last report. Moving ahead, the summary of work in progress, and proposed. So we just talked about the county lot, and I have here, just curious where that town council opinion is at, that we discussed last October for the quiet title. Do we know if,
I'm gonna have to check, but, I mean, I was gone for most of July, and she's gone till September, because I didn't come back till August 7th, and the email says that she's gone from July 31st till September 1st.
But we didn't have
I
any,
have to check
we didn't,
my emails.
we didn't have anything from Laura on that point prior to that?
I just have to check emails. I'm
Okay.
just trying to catch up. Monday was my first day back.
Yep.
So I don't have an answer for Jeremy, but I can trace back emails and see
okay,
chronologically where we are.
Okay, thanks.
all right. Yeah, so the Eastman timber sale, has had some not complications, but some considerations on how to best access the property. in those opportunities. So at this point, we have spoke to Chris Bolton, who abuts the Eastman Forest off 114, and he's clearly open to meeting up and seeing if there's a opportunity for him to help the town out with getting access there. So we just haven't had that on-site meeting with Chris or evaluating that access, but that appears to be going in a good direction.
And who'd be attending that meeting?
Well, that would be myself and Matthias Nevins, the other field forester that's kind of leading that project.
Right.
And would someone from the Concom want to also attend that? I know we met on
Not-
site and,
Not likely,
Seemed
but,
like-
but in case,
Throw an
if
invitation.
if you get that scheduled out, let us know.
all right, can do. All right. There's two forestry plans that are out of date that we want to get in a queue for updating to stay compliant with just the standard practice of a 10-year rotation of planting and then certified tree farm requirements and all those things that we are certified through for our forestry. So that involves Farron Pond and Poor Farm. And they were authored and accepted in 2012, so last year, they expired last December. Didn't expire, but they're out of date, and
Yeah.
and it's within reason to update it. It's just something we housekeeping, we don't want to be too grossly, late on. So I'd recommend that that we plan to update those within the next calendar year. And what I can do is I can put together the agreements for that service, for those to get into our work queue and have that be a management action item for the next year.
Yep.
And then the Barden lot, that with that forestry management planning, that's something that is been evaluated and has a number of activities that are scheduled. So we can get that into a place where if the workforce and marketplace and weather and all those things line up, we can have some forestry projects ready to go. So that's just another work item that we should consider to get into the work queue within the next year. So just another thing that I'd recommend.
So that'd be the next one behind, or in sequence to actually moving forward with the next one on the west side of Eastman.
Yeah, yep, that's right. Yep. And then I noticed in some minutes, some conservation minutes, there's been discussions about the town, the Concom or the town needing to be compliant with the assessment of the easement conditions at Collins Landing, and we historically have helped you with that, but I don't know if that's changed, but I see that you've been discussing that, so I just wanted to let you know if that's something you want us to continue doing, we can do that.
Yeah. I appreciate you adding that here, and I think we will. And could you, let's say by September meeting, prepare an FSA to cover that, at what you think the hourly might be on
Yeah,
doing the monitoring and throwing the report in it, and to spin it for it?
yep, I can. And one thing we might want to think about the next fiscal year is to have an hourly FSA for conservation, because we ran into that problem earlier with, I think was it the county farm, that we had to backpedal because it wasn't a town forest technically, so it wouldn't fall under the
Right.
FSA, which generically has been forest funds. So it's
Right.
just something you might want to think about annually, just having an own unique forest fund FSA
Yeah,
for
it-
hourly
it-
and one conservation
Right,
fund. But for this one,
they'd mirror each other, but for
Different
one being the conservation fund, out of the conservation fund, the other out of the town forest account, yeah.
yeah, so, but for this case, I'll create that for the Collins Ledge. All right. Okay, great. And, yeah, and so on the Eastman, the only other thing to conclude with on the Eastman timber sale with the access challenges there, that, let's see, that forestry, agreement expires this December, and I just felt that it would be important to reissue, a new agreements that'll give us till next December, and I have that here also.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
This is also just references, it's a renewal of that one that will be expiring in December,
Yeah.
so,
Andy, did you have a chance to review those? I got them in the email today, those two bills.
I had not.
I checked with the office, and they said you guys were current, so,
Now, there's one for.
Well, these were just issued,
Oh.
July 31st, so.
The one for Meridian, though, is 60 to 90 days.
oh, yeah, okay.
We haven't paid that for
Yeah.
Yep.
since May,
I know.
3 months.
I don't recall seeing that one. Okay.
Yeah, she said she emailed you in June and then you didn't have a meeting. But she forwarded me the same email.
Okay. All right, and folks want to look at this other renewal that we're being asked to have a look at? So on these renewals, we'll need a motion if somebody feels so inclined, and a second to authorize renewal of them. All right, so as not to confuse me too much, I've got a copy of these, Ray.
You do? Okay.
So we can hold that or pitch it. Not mentioned here, we have apparently two, let's see. Two forestry plans in our hands to comment on, and I have not had a look yet at the Barden one. And what was the other newly created one? Was that the?
That was, the one off 149, Barrett, right? Barrett?
Oh, it's up before you get to where the old Toby, you go to
Yeah.
Toby Hill.
Yep.
Yeah.
Put it under your pillow, Andy.
Life is full, Jeremy.
I know, right? So,
All right, does anybody have any concerns, any wish to see these FSAs renewed? Either or, both?
Make a motion that we approve the FSAs as printed.
Do we have a second? Mark's motion. Ray's second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. That's all in favor. All right, this one is, make sure I'm not, 2023-003, 2023-004. There you go, sir. Take those, Sherry. Very good. Thank you, Jeremy.
okay, thanks Ray and Andy, Sherry and
Yep.
Mark. See you Monday.
Monday?
6:30.
Hey, yeah.
6:30 sharp.
Be back here and be square. Before you go, Andrew, any questions of forestry nature before I let our guy go?
Not probably that I can just ask you guys.
Yep.
I'm curious about projects at the Barton lot and the Eastman lots.
I think you did hear that we are planning the same sort of, that we discussed here on Felch, same sort of trail contingency into what will be the harvest, next harvest there on Eastman. Is that true, Jeremy? I thought I heard that tonight.
I think it should always be part of, potential thing to do, because you're already in there with machines and.
And the next harvest units, or the next units that get harvested are proximal to John Stark?
Correct, yeah. Yep.
And that work, any sense when that might kick off? Is that winter work possibility, or
Possibly,
at the earliest? Otherwise, we're into next year sometime.
exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Andrew, come on up, introduce yourself, share your interests and thoughts.
My name's Andrew Sheard. I am a Weare resident, and I have been teaching at John Stark for a few years. I teach science, and I get to teach some of the fun classes where we get to go outside. And so what that means is, over the last few years, I live close to the school. And so as just a Weare resident who wants to kind of see what land we have to enjoy, but also as a teacher, I've been kind of poking around, mainly the Eastman Conservation and recently the Barton lot, to see what kind of opportunities for the school there is and for students to utilize the space that we have. I mean, both of those, the Barton one is a little bit less accessible because it's across 114, but the Eastman Conservation lot in one place actually abuts our property. So I reached out to Andy to ask a couple specific questions about things that we can do right now to help utilize the Eastman Conservation. And then I just kind of have general, just sort of, if you guys have ideas for how John Stark students can be kind of doing something that's actually useful to the town. So I have a couple maps of the Eastman lot, just to kind of give you guys a visual of an idea, or a couple propositions.
Naomi, do you remember the name of the longtime science teacher up there at Stark who worked with us years ago? Is it Barbara something? Didn't she do, I think she did ecology or something, did some wildlife tracking in Trent?
Yeah.
Does anybody remember Barbara's last name? I'm skipping on it for some
I've
reason.
recently met her at like a gathering, Barb, or but
Yes,
I don't-
Barb
that's-
Beers,
we already-
right? Is
Yeah,
that right?
that sounds
Does
right.
that sound right?
Yeah, I think you're right.
So there's
So
precedent.
I think she did some tracking transects that she shared with us. She talked about, and actually flagged out a trail similar to the green line you have up there. So that was probably about a decade ago.
Okay.
Yeah, it has been a while. So not exactly new ground, like I
Yeah.
mentioned to you, but go right ahead.
Yeah, so the current situation is that the only marked trail from the John Stark lot, so I believe that the trail that you're mentioning, Andy, is no longer, if it's marked, it's not very clear.
Yeah.
You're kind of bushwhacking. if you
Right,
go
and
along
she in the class did very minimal
Oh, really?
lopping to cut it.
that. Yeah,
I traveled it a couple times, but no, it was nothing with significant blazing or, follow the blue triangles or whatever sort of deals. So it wasn't a permanent sort of deal, but it was in that area, I know
Yeah.
that much.
so the only marked trail is that red line, which is a private lot. I think it's in common use. I believe that actually it might be yours. And so I think I've heard from the grapevine that you're okay with using it, but I think if we want to,
Actually,
yeah,
he spoke to me back in March at
Oh,
the
yeah.
voting
okay.
and asked me about it.
Was it Joel Kress? Was he the one who asked you?
I thought it was you.
It might have been. I don't.
It was at the vote.
Okay.
I thought it was you.
There's another.
Maybe it was Joe.
There's another Weare resident who's a teacher, Joel Kress.
Yeah, maybe it was him.
Yeah.
But I think I'd spoken to you later on, maybe, or
Maybe, yeah.
somebody, somewhere, yeah.
So, and we were thankful, I mean, you're gracious and I think you were encouraged students to traverse, kind of, to be able to use. But as we hope to kind of increase, I think, use, and obviously we're not talking anything crazy, we're talking just students make it more regular that they kind of go over there. We just thought it might be good to have a direct trail that's going straight from the school property, where that solid green line is, right to the conservation area.
Yeah, that does kick off pretty good from that back corner, that northeast corner, up above the softball field. It's a natural,
Yeah,
and in fact, I think there is trail that goes up on, or at least footpath, up on the ridge along the edge, or behind the backstop on the softball field
yeah.
that kind of kicks you off
Mhm.
that direction naturally.
So I don't know what that looks like, on conservation land for people to mark trails, new trails. So that's kind of why I'm here. I just want to be prudent and not do anything that we haven't asked permission for, or even if you guys think that's unnecessary. So just want to kind of open.
Well, the Boy Scouts marked the Ferrin Pond Trail years back.
Right.
That's a project that was allowed.
Yeah, and that went along with a map and a guide, which was kind of nice.
Yeah.
They refreshed some work that had been started, I think.
And if this
Couple
lot's
decades
gonna be
ago.
logged in the next year or so, it might be easier to have trails going through it at
Yeah.
that point.
Yeah,
If you cut trails before that, they'll probably get destroyed by the logging equipment.
that's a great point.
Right, and your signs are gonna disappear because they're gonna cut a good portion of the trees down.
Yeah.
Do you have some sense of where they'll be cutting or how much they'll be cutting? Do we kind of know that yet?
They'll go in, they'll do quite a cut, I'm guessing,
Yeah.
because they're gonna cross private. When they do this, they'll have to cross, or right now, they're talking about crossing private land, so they're probably gonna wanna go in and take a heavy harvest, I'm guessing, I don't know for sure, but,
Somewhere, Andrew, we do have descriptions of that. But I'd also give you contact information for both Jeremy, who you saw tonight, as well as Forrester, who's kind of the right-hand man, does a lot of the Weare work, Matthias. Between the two of them, they'd be quick to that answer.
Yeah, right, right.
And our vice chair, Steve, also very savvy on the forestry, so he might recall. But it is that northwest
Yeah,
portion.
we walked that, I walked that with.
You were on that one, yeah.
Yeah, I walked that.
Did you kicked off from,
We came in off of 114.
yeah,
here.
so
But
you
when we
you
came
walked
up-
up here.
Yeah, but when we came out, we actually came out right in here, through Chris Bolton's
You
property.
did, okay. So
Yeah.
it's
I
stayed
just
in
thought-
that area.
Well, I just thought that this was a much better entrance versus coming off of, coming in off this little
I
narrow
agree
strip
with you.
here.
I agree with you, yeah.
Yeah.
Sherry, what's the lot number to Chris Bolton's, or it's not listed?
It's not a lot number, it's gonna be, there's a circular little road in here. I think it's gonna be in this corner right here.
Oh, okay.
There's a building in there, garage of some sort, and
Oh,
it's,
okay,
it's
yeah.
So that's
beside
the
that
access,
garage.
they're gonna build a road out from 114 into that, or you just?
No,
That-
there's a
that was-
roadway already
Oh,
there.
okay, okay.
That was proposed, but the better solution for this one is to try to secure a better agreement to actually exit through commercial property
Okay.
on an existing driveway.
Is
So-
that the one where Sizemore has their equipment for?
Yeah.
sale?
Next one
Right
up,
next door, yeah.
the next, the one
Yeah.
farther up, above them.
The one next.
The
Oh,
one that,
Immediately to
Danica.
the
I
north.
used to own that.
It all looks,
Russell.
Russell, Billy, yeah.
Okay.
That's super helpful. I didn't know that there was logging already planned, and I didn't know it was right in that area, so that makes a lot of sense to me to just wait. And there'll probably be an easy trail.
there
Yeah,
may
you can
be,
follow the skidder trail,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
they're gonna skid all the
Yeah.
property out. They'll make a landing down here toward the road somewhere.
Yeah.
So all those logs are gonna come down out of there, so,
And then how far east are they pushing? Are they gonna kind of stay clear of the beaver pond there, or are
well, they
they?
have to stay back away from it, a
okay.
ways.
I think on this one, they're not getting into that sort of, that more central portion of the property.
Okay.
I think they're holding a bit tighter to the western boundary. So I don't, the reason I say that is because I know that existing Woods Road almost gets to the beaver pond. And they very much were looking for a way to pull trucks out of the west side. If they were going to be right near that existing road, it'd be pretty easy to take things down to the south end of the property. So that just sort of makes me think that they're probably not going to be over in that area of the beaver pond.
Because that brings up my next question, which is the old logging road pretty clearly kind of brings you to the beaver pond. And I actually realized as I was making my little markings on your maps, that probably the beaver pond is newer than the logging road, which is why it gets lost. The I think the old logging road actually might go right where that beaver pond is, and it picks up after the beaver pond.
After the other side of it.
And so I'm curious if we can connect what is now the end of the logging road on the south end of the pond, if we can kind of blaze a trail around the beaver pond to hook back up to the other end of the logging road, just so that is kind of an easy for students and for anybody else who's kind of walking that main road that kind of goes from the south end to the north end, can kind of just go all the way down the hill to where the railroad grade is at the bottom there.
Yeah, that sounds to me like a fantastic idea. What we'd probably want to do is just have somebody on the commission just have a look at it with you, or with whomever is going to be sort of leading that effort, just to, so we have eyeballs on ground and what you're thinking.
Yeah. And I don't even have plans. I mean, there's a lot of small stuff that's kind of like around that north end. So I don't think it would be super hard to just kind of take a small chainsaw. I don't know tools or process, but just take a small chainsaw, kind of take a 4 foot or 3 foot wide path and just kind of cut some stuff as you go down.
That would be, that'd be in keeping with what we've heard as the will of the populace for better access, more trail connectivity, so. Sounds like a good idea.
Cool. Yeah, so in terms of getting somebody out there, I don't know how logistically how that works, if I contact you, just in terms of somebody coming out with me and just looking at it. Ideally, we love students to do the work. Like, that's kind of the whole goal, is for them to take part in something that's actually meaningful, instead of just trying to set things up that are kind of like meaningful projects. So
Right.
that would be kind of the goal, is to heading into this fall, maybe I've walked it with somebody and we kind of know what we want to do, and then we can plan something for students to do.
Oh,
Teach them to work hard, so that way when they get out of school, they can come work for us.
Yeah, well, yeah.
He's not too much to say.
I don't know, we got two good ones right now.
Some are better than others.
We got Connor and Dan, they're doing very well.
Yeah,
They're only sophomores, and
cool.
they come and work
Yeah,
with
Dan
us.
Duheim,
Huh?
Dan Duheim.
Dan Duhane
Yeah, I know
and
Dan.
Connor Boudreau, and they come to the shop
Yeah.
and they work hard for us.
Yeah.
They like it.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that. I've had both of them.
Well, I don't know about it, they put up with it.
I've had both of them in class. That's good to hear.
Connor likes it.
The other kind of maybe overarching thing is on that topic, like, are there any other things, and maybe this has more to do with the recreation side, because I know you have foresters working for you, but is there any other ideas or projects that we might engage students in that actually do benefit the Conservation Commission or the town? I know you mentioned a GIS project. Is there anything that we can contribute to there that either makes some of the land more accessible to whoever might want to use it, or provides information for people who are frequenting, like anything like that?
let me throw out an idea.
I've got one.
Barden property's close by. Yeah, it's not as easily accessed because 114, you need to travel across somehow. And it could be a pretty substantial project, but it could also be in pieces that could be more manageable. Would be evaluate that property for trail access and traversing.
Mhm.
You know, just front to back, say, all right, here's a raw piece of property. If we were to, you know, put our planning caps on here, where would we want to go, either for views or interesting, you know, plant communities or, you
We've
know,
had that
pond
discussion
side.
with a few private people that wanted to contribute, and we want to develop a trail system on all of the town's land. And as a science teacher, you might want to identify vernal pools, different trees, species, soil types even, and make a trail system that would navigate through all of that. And that would be a very nice.
It's almost a blank slate, but part of it could be, there are some existing wood road, you've been through there, you probably sense that now and then you're on a formerly traveled path. You know, even pegging that with GIS, which is pretty easy to do these days. You know, and turn it into a little bit of a mapping project. Even, you know, even something as simple as, well, what would we do as students to estimate how tall, you know, the highest esker is in there?
Yeah.
And how would you go about it to come up with a number? Is it, you know, 30 feet above, you know, some sort of base level? Is there places where it's more? How would you measure it? Can you measure it using GPS sort of stuff? Would old style surveying things allow you to estimate it? Can you just use some math and some angles to, you know? You could look at it for, you know, just exemplary, you know, individual trees even. You know, you could have an exercise, all right, well, how do you properly, in the forestry realm or in the natural resources realm, classify or characterize an eastern pine. Where do you measure, how do you measure?
Yeah.
And if, once you start measuring, you know, you can do some math. Is there an average that you can pull from a, you know, characterizing a stand? Is there an exemplary individual tree that might want to be noted for, you know, sparing from a harvest? And
Yeah.
there are lots of different things you could do on sort of a blank slate there.
Right.
Moving over to Eastman, I don't know whether there are any records, or even talking to Barb, whether there's something that could be followed up on.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, if she looked at something, even just looking for snowshoe hare,
yeah.
and trying to do some transects, could that be repeated and see whether, are the snowshoe hare still there? Is it
Yeah,
a
yeah.
similar abundance? Has it changed in the 10 years since a student group last looked at it? Winter tracking is a wonderful
Yeah.
way to get students
out.
to think about ecology and what it takes to have habitat for various of the animal species. So lots of different
Yeah.
things that would be consistent with what we would like, you know, a conservation property to offer to a town.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
A living laboratory for sure.
Yeah. That's great.
Black gum swamp is nearby. How many black gum trees are there?
Yeah.
What are their dimensions? Maybe estimate how old one of
Yeah.
these might be. Are they 200 years old? Are there some 300 years old?
Yeah. That's in Eastman?
Could you potentially
Out of it.
even go to Cora tree, you know, in a way that doesn't compromise it, which most scientists seem to be able to do so they can learn things.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, some of the bristle cones, you think, why did he have to cut it down to count it, you know? They come up with these, it's 3,250 years old, dead now. You know, there are probably ways they could have done that without actually knocking it that far back, so,
Yeah, we won't be running any chainsaws
yeah.
with the students.
Not for that sort of thing. So, it's entirely consistent with
Yeah.
what we are charged with as stewards of town conservation properties. And jumping back to that, Barden and, you know, possibly a trail, recreational, educational at the same time sort of project, you know, that's one where we are actually tasked with getting to that point where
Okay.
trails are known and can be
Yeah.
shared and can be found by the public.
Yeah.
And we haven't gotten to that point, and we want to, and hopefully we'll be able to look back in the near future and say, hey, now we've got something we didn't have before that
Yeah.
increases its value and accessibility to town folks.
Yeah.
A lot of possibilities.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like, which is great because those sorts of blank slates help students to actually realize that they are doing something meaningful. It's not like we're just making up work for them. It's like,
Right.
no, we really want people from your generation to give us input on what you would like to see happen at the Barden property, and it's information that can be presented to you all, and it's a perspective that you can take into account, you know, from.
It could even be the work that allows check off on the senior project
Yeah, that's right.
in a way that's not too burdensome, and
Yeah,
one could look back on as a young adult or even a middle age or oldster and say, hey, that was a piece of,
yeah,
you know, piece of the town, and there it is. It's still,
Mhm.
you know, still actively enjoyed in some fashion or recognized.
yeah,
My favorite thing being an excavation contractor, not anymore, now I'm in erosion control.
Mhm.
When we did excavation was hydrology, how the water travels through the soil, perched water tables, you know, different soil types, how high the water tables are.
yeah,
And it makes you understand why there's wetlands in certain areas, types of soil, ledge, you know, where the water comes from, which way it's traveling. A little bit too complicated maybe for high school,
yeah,
but, you know.
High schools could
you
handle a
put- yeah,
hand auger in certain locations
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
You can put the idea into
And-
the students' heads that, you know, the water does travel through the soil at different rates,
Right.
different
depths.
quantities, heights, different water tables.
Sometimes different directions. Is it going into
For
the pond or
example-
is it coming out of the pond,
Yeah.
you know?
On our property, there's 40 feet of gravel near the road. The water table is 17 feet down. And there's a well there, and that's fine. So 400 feet in, the soil changes. It becomes red, it becomes more rocky. I have a pond 9 feet deep, 30 feet away from where the gravel is, right? But yet, the gravel is 9 feet lower than the water, and there's no water at the gravel. But what causes that pond to happen is right behind the pond, the elevation changes 100 feet. And it's all ledge and very thick soils. So the water travels through that soil. When it gets to the bottom of the hill, it doesn't keep going down at the same height, it comes up, perched water table. So it allows you to have a pond in a place where you wouldn't think you could have one.
Right, yeah.
And that's always fascinated me as far as, you know, that type of thing. So I see builders all the time buy a lot or do a subdivision. My biggest pet peeve is a developer will go in and do a subdivision. They don't take the time to study. I have one next door to me. They literally built 4 houses in wetlands. I never said anything because I always thought the town or the conservation commission or something would notice, do a site walk and say, hey, you know, you got lady slippers here, you got a flowing seasonal brook here, and you've designed a septic system on top of it. As a result, you know, 5 or 6 of those septic systems have failed
Yeah.
in the last 10 years, and I kind of regret not interjecting and having an opinion at it. But I figured, well, it's your land. If the town allows you to do it, who am I to say no?
Yeah.
It's not my land. But that's one of the reasons why I got on the Conservation Commission. I just kind of want to keep an eye on,
Yeah,
you know, I don't want to stop anybody from doing something.
yeah,
But on the other hand, there's a lot of people that want to do things that shouldn't be done.
right, yeah.
So,
Yeah, and a lot of my students, when you start to talk practicality, right, we talk about soil, and then you make a connection to the fact that some people want to build their land on soil that's not appropriate. That's what kind of gets them attentive, and
Yep.
that's when they're actually interested in knowing. Like the 2 students you're mentioning, they get interested when you talk about information that they can use in some
Yep.
sort of.
so it's very interesting. If you can get them interested, like the 2 students we have that work with it, we bring them on private jobs to do
Yeah.
with silt fence and erosion sock. We explain to them why we're doing what we're doing. And Connor asks a lot of questions. Dan is a little quiet, but he's coming along.
Yeah,
But it's nice to be able to bring a young person along and teach him something fairly important.
Yeah.
You know, we're teaching him the different seed types, where they belong, and they like it. They're interested in it, you know, so we want to keep them interested.
Well, yeah, not all students get excited about the natural realm, but for some who don't get excited about anything else, they find a place that's meaningful and enjoyable to be for a little bit of a class, and
yeah.
they can make a difference, so more power to them there.
Yeah, thanks. Sherry, do you have an idea?
Yeah, I was thinking that it wouldn't be like, during school time, but a place where there's been quite a lot of trails put in that have actually overgrown now is over on Poor Farm. That Poor Farm trail, they cut that off, and there was a lot of tops and stuff left, but that's been quite a few years now, so I'm just thinking that might be something like on a weekend for 3 or 4 hours, whatever,
Yeah.
to have the kids come and meet, and
Yeah.
then go out and open up those trails again. And it'd be fairly easy, I think.
Is there any record of like any maps or anything? of them?
I actually think there was a little booklet put together. I don't know if I have one, but I can, I'm sure
If
there was a little
you-
booklet made up of
I
that.
think that's one where we have something on the conservation website,
Okay,
on the
yeah.
town web pages, or
Great.
conservation pages on the town website.
Yeah.
Poor Farm, I think, along with Fair and Pond are the 2 that have notions of trail maps
Okay,
in existence.
yeah.
And I know Farron's pretty well
Yeah,
good, because a friend of mine went up actually and worked
Oh,
for
good.
a few hours up there with a power saw, and had a lot of big branches down. He just
Yeah,
did that this
yeah.
spring, so I think that one's in pretty good shape.
yeah, great. Yeah, well, thanks. I mean, this is kind of thing in education is sometimes our ideas are always better than what turns out. But it's helpful to, even if it's something small that comes out of it or an opportunity for kids to get out there, that's kind of what I'm going for. At minimum, just to get out and be able to take advantage of some of the properties we have, and then maybe ideally take part in something that's actually going to benefit the town and you guys. So I appreciate the
Yeah,
ideas.
with the range of students, you might find a few that
Yeah.
find a passion for it, and that can make all the difference.
Yeah, the quick question, and then I think that's all for me. The Barden property and that desire to have, kind of create something there, do you guys have a timeline with that? That we could work within, or is this kind of as it? as you have-
Nothing that would be exclusionary
Yeah.
of student effort,
Okay.
so. No, and, we have I guess you call it an open promise
Okay,
of intention to get that, better, better mapped, better
access.
presented with regards to what's out there and how to get to it.
Yeah. Well, as a resident, I'm happy to hear from you, like, I live very close to the school and both those properties, but particularly the Barden one. I'd be interested in just how I could be of use to you guys in trying to make, because your desires for a trail system and sort of an education, kind of make it.
Component, yeah.
So I would love, as somebody who's kind of got my feet in both those worlds, to kind of take part in that.
Yep, and that one connects with a bunch of other town conservation properties, so there's a broader area, even, it might not seem like much, but just occasionally having, basically, if you see something, let us know.
Yeah.
It would,
Yeah.
and the fancy name for somebody doing that's a monitor, but,
Yeah,
if something looks out of place or untoward or new or
yeah,
uncharacteristic, just letting us know about it's incredibly helpful.
yeah. Yeah.
We have some members who get out to various areas regularly, and,
Mhm.
but even with that, there's, eyes and ears are always helpful.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Do you want to collect these for future use?
Yeah.
Okay.
Students.
Excellent. Yep. Thanks for coming by, Andrew, and
Yeah,
best
thanks.
wishes to you.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. All right, anything Ray to say about, the other aspect, Barden and the buildings?
I spoke to Bob Moore in that construction summary. He's gonna help me set up a bid format. I have not gotten together with Naomi. Our schedules haven't coincided, so we won't be able to put it out to bid
Till next month.
because I haven't done,
We
I
should
don't-
have it for September.
Yeah.
yeah, we'll just have to get the information together. I don't wanna have another thing like we just talked about tonight.
Yep.
I wanna make
Thank you.
sure that there's
Absolutely.
some sort of a spec and an order to it.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I'm gonna be careful about what I do. But we will,
All right.
I'll keep working
That's,
on that.
that's cool. Volunteer updates, member updates, those are carryovers. I don't think we have anything new on those. Do you know of anything new on those, Naomi?
Well, the volunteers, you can just say, schools come forward.
No, just looking at agenda items, I think other business we have
Yeah, that's-
is
yeah.
generic stuff.
Yeah, you have some bills to approve for Mills End though.
Yep, I've got those. No other mail?
Mail's been quiet.
And just one of these days, we're gonna get back to approving some minutes. We did get,
You got minutes from last meeting.
We did get minutes from the last meeting, so let's,
Minute taker.
right. So we have
We still have to catch up some more.
July.
We have July's meeting.
So,
I didn't see that. Did that just get sent out? Naomi?
They were sent out, they were posted a long time.
they were,
They were posted while I was gone.
Oh, really?
right.
I
I
must
told
have,
them, but they didn't email them to us.
No, we didn't.
Yeah, I didn't get
Right,
'em.
so let's go look for them.
I didn't email them.
Grab them, no, nobody did. So grab them from the website and let's say,
Yeah,
in
'cause the girl-
September we
the
can,
girl sends them and then we put them up.
yeah.
So if you e-subscribe to the website, click on conservation minutes and you'll get it.
Right.
so you post it.
You'll, yeah, what she said.
Yeah.
But let's plan to at least approve those July ones next month. And for next month. Also, let's try again to be able to approve the forest management plans for, well, for Barden plus the other one that Steve sent around a few weeks back. That, Barnett doesn't sound quite right.
No.
It's, but I know of what Jeremy spoke, but I just can't think of the name right now. Those are the forestry plans that are already been produced and we just need to approve them. So let's get approvals for those in September. There are two of them. Anybody have anything else? There being none. Somebody have a motion for 927?
Do you just sign these, you don't approve them publicly?
Don't need to. Don't need, some, we have occasionally.
Chris Beth sent out the two for Meadows, no, one for Meadows End and one for Meridian.
Right, we approve those front end,
yeah.
so I can just sign them.
Yeah, she's just looking for them to be signed, because I think
Bartlett.
she did the spreadsheet
Partly,
too.
yeah.
She sent
Thank
you
you.
guys a spreadsheet, which I copied and put in your stuff. She's got two outstanding, that she has to take, which is Meridian and the one for, Meadows End, 225.
Yeah, that's
So the
one,
Meridian one ended up being confused, that's why you haven't paid it. They set it up originally for Meadows End timber. Jeremy told her that it should be billed for the town.
we went back and forth on that.
So we cut her a check, sent a check for $1,000 for the deposit.
For the, yeah,
The work was done, we were billed, and had, I think it says for professional services for May 13th of 2023. So the original $1,000 has been paid, but the balance has not been paid. Because I spoke to Meridian today.
all right. I will get that to Beth, for sure. All right, anything else? Motion to adjourn, anybody?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning at 9:28, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.